Okay, so it is 4:31. We'll call this meeting to order. I'm Bryce Spear, the SHAC chair, and everyone wants to go around and introduce themselves so we know who's here. That would be great.
Hey, I'm Sarah Jeffers.
April Kersey.
Tony LaBelle.
Luana Wilski. Sam Fort.
Wade Hammark.
Misty Westover.
Dana Fisher.
Becky Fralick.
Blake Love. Manuel Texidor.
Samira Debbie.
Mamie Prejean. Christina Keller.
Lance Miracle.
Perfect. Thank you all for spending your time with us this afternoon. Our first letter of business, Mr. Haymark, if you want to.
The minutes from the February 28th SHAC meeting were distributed through email. It was requested that all members review the minutes prior to today's meeting. That being said, are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, if there's no corrections, I'll call for a motion. I'm sorry, but
Sorry, I think there was one, unless it was already corrected. I think Dr. Upshaw was listed as a member. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
okay, we can make that correction. Dr. Spear, you want to do that?
Is that on? Yes. Okay. Yes. So last meeting, Dr. Upshaw was gracious to come to the table with us and help as a subject matter expert. So I think moving forward, we'll more clearly delineate who is here when we have experts coming in to help us navigate some of the matters that where we need their expertise. So we'll let the meeting minutes reflect that Dr. Upshaw was a subject matter expert for the February 28th meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. Are there any further corrections? Okay, I call for a motion to accept the minutes as corrected. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do we have a second? Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes. The February 28th meeting minutes will be corrected and posted to the CIC SHAC website. That's great.
Great. Next slide, please. Actually, hold on.
One other quick comment on the minutes. I think I may have mentioned this to you, Wade, but going forward, and I see we have it on this version, anytime we put the minutes out and they haven't been approved, if we can just put a watermark to make sure that if anybody sees it, they understand that's unapproved, it's a draft. So I don't know what wording you want to use, draft or unapproved, but if we can do that as a practice going forward, that would be good.
Yeah, and so when you mentioned that to us, we did go back and update it. So they'll remain draft until we approve them for the next SHAC meeting. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, the next item of business is updates from the subcommittees. Our first subcommittee update is the bylaws subcommittee. So just as a brief recap, you guys have received many emails about this, so I thank you for your tolerance and communication about this topic. The bylaw revisions were done based off of Texas Education Code 28.004, as well as the Texas DSHS School Health Advisory Council, a guide for Texas school districts. We had multiple meetings to date. We've had input from SHAC members, district council, district administrators. We've emailed about this quite a few times. And so we're presenting the bylaws today for approval. So does anyone have any comments or discussion or questions about the bylaws as they are?
What's the process for the bylaw approval? Does it have to go through legal or the board, or?
No. The bylaws are governing documents of the Student Health Advisory Council. So we as a SHAC are able to decide which, how we want our SHAC to be governed. They are consistent with the law, which is 28.004, and then the district council actually did read them and go over them, so looked at them, so they were sound from a district lens as well. Any other questions or comments? All right. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the bylaws?
Make a motion to approve the bylaw revisions.
Second?
I second.
Who was the second?
Maybe Frazier.
All in favor? Count. Yeah, sorry.
Keep 'em up.
Yeah, keep them up. We can get the, let me know when you're good, Mrs. Torres. All right. Our next order of business is the updates from the compliance subcommittee. Over here.
Sorry, I guess that passed.
Oh, sorry,
all-
so sorry, yes, motion
Okay.
passed. What was the total vote?
17.
Oh, was 17, unanimously? No, okay,
One.
17, 1 nay. Okay. All right, so the next committee, subcommittee update is from the compliance subcommittee. So we have been working very closely with the district to make sure to go through all of the parts that the SHAC is responsible for under TEC 28004. And so with the help of Dr. Upshaw and the subcommittee of compliance, we have this working document. I know this slide is a busy slide, but this is just a screenshot of the handout that was available when you walked in. And so what it is a spreadsheet of all the areas the SHAC has been called by the state or designated by the state to take action to assist the district and the board in providing community input on these specific topics. And so we have a live working document, and like I said, this is just a screenshot of the template that we're using, and then I'll hand over so Ms. Kersey can elaborate more. All of these bullet points are all of the things that the state of Texas says the Student Health Advisory Council should be doing to assist a district and a board to help make sure that the community values are represented in what is being educated or what is our students are being taught. So this is what we have been working on, and then I'll hand over to Ms. Kersey so she can elaborate.
You can go back to the prior slide.
Yeah.
Just to kind of orient everyone, this is the same document, it's just been updated. Dr. Upshaw and I worked on it since our last meeting, but I did present it in our last meeting. The point of it was to summarize what's required of the SHAC, the legal directives in TEC 28004. And so what you'll see is for every section, it lists, what is the compliance requirements, what's our compliance status, and if there's any SHAC meeting timeframe to kind of trigger up, and then notes and information. So there's lots to digest here. We won't go into it in detail right now, but we wanted to make sure that everyone knew it's a resource that we can use. We'll provide the link when we have the meeting summary that goes out so that you guys can peruse it in your own time. But really the point is to make sure that we all understand where we're at with regard to compliance, and also understand specifically what are the directives from TEC 2804, and then also to help guide us as a SHAC on what are the areas we want to tackle, what are the areas we think that maybe we have some gaps or we want to work, and spend our time as a SHAC. So that was really the purpose of the document. So I think it ended up being in good shape. Thank you, Dr. Upshaw, for helping us put it together. And yeah, we'll send out the links so you guys can spend some time looking over it if you have an opportunity. And then next meeting we can talk about if there's certain topics that speak to you or speak to us as a SHAC that we want to try to tackle.
Any questions or comments? Okay. One of the when you look through the document, you'll see actions that have occurred previously from the history of the SHAC, and then when we may need to revisit different topics. And so one of the things that has come up to look at just from a safety standpoint within our schools is the opioid updates that are happening given the change and the uptick in different crises that have affected our campuses. This ties in a bit to the mental health, but I just wanted to let you know that we are working on it to get some data to figure out where our district stands and how we can help our students. And then soon we want Mr. Chief Blakelock to present to us some opioid stuff. So opioids, I shouldn't call it stuff that's very serious, but just numbers on how we can be effective and come alongside and help if the need is there. So any other comments? Okay. All right, the next item of business is the membership. Andrew, could you click on the link in the document, please? So at our previous meeting, we had approved the membership application, and this is a request to approve the electronic version of the application, which is the same one that we already presented, which is, the link is not working. Let me see here. Yeah, if you can get it, it'd be great, thank you. But basically, this is the exact same form that we approved in paper copy, but we'll have the link on the website, so if someone's interested in joining the shack, then they can just electronically submit it. It all goes to a Google, spreadsheet, so the membership committee has everything already compiled. It just makes the process easier. An applicant could still use the paper application if they wanted. This is just an additional way for people to input their information and apply.
And it should make it easier for applicants.
Yes.
I would have preferred that myself.
Yes.
So if there's not any I guess the question is, are there any concerns with the approach of having an electronic application? Okay.
Yeah, do you guys want to see it before we, it's the same.
The Google form.
Yeah,
Very
but,
exciting. But it is, as Bryce said, it's exactly what we approved last meeting, so there's been no additional edits or, it's the same as what's already been approved.
correct.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the ownership of this, the Google Doc, when somebody moves from that committee to another, how is that process going to be done or secured?
Sure, yeah, that's an excellent question. So we've been working with Dr. Upshaw in creating an internal shack website. So that internal shack website is co-managed by district as well as designated individuals from the shack. So I have access to it right now as the chair, and we're sort of building it out. Because one of the things we noticed is that there really wasn't a central hub of information to try to track down, and that way when people change positions, everything's there. So that's the goal. We're working through glitches, and like I said, Dr. Upshaw's been great at helping and getting everything set up. So I think it will work really nicely. And then it also protects the district and the shack to make sure that we are storing records consistent with what the law requires. So, yeah. Okay, there it is. So we'll just, I guess, slow roll through it. Here's the application, very straightforward. And like we said, just the Google document form of what you've already approved in paper.
And as we discussed at last meeting, this will go live May 1st, so this is not posted as of yet.
Right. All right. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the electronic application? Mrs. Westover, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Yes, ma'am. Okay. The next item of business is the Mental Health Subcommittee update. Oh, perfect. Did Lindsay reach out to you?
Yes.
I was
Oh,
thinking.
yes, no, I know, but she had messaged me, Lindsay Taylor is out sick tonight, and so, I'm glad you're here to do the meeting.
Yes, hi. Okay, my name is Conroe ISD, and we're in subcommittee for mental health. One of the main concerns that was brought up was the usage of cell phones within the district or in our schools. And after some investigation, thank you. After some investigation done, it's not a policy that we can put in place. This is something that is a campus-based decision. So we left it at that to see what we're going to be doing. The meeting was recorded. Some great mentions about a waive for a day, things that other districts have done were brought up as points. But overall, the points to discuss, if any members here, if I'm incorrect, please let me know. Policies on the cell phones, we're going to look at other districts, how to tighten cell phone policies, and when our policies are put in place, when does that take place? But obviously the answer to this is it's not a district-based decision, it's a campus decision made.
That's the current status, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's currently what's happening. And I think Mamie, you may be about to speak on this, but you had mentioned it's a campus foundation.
Yes, it's the Foundations Committee, and what we've decided as a SHAC committee, our subcommittee, that we wanted to put out some recommendations to the Foundations Committee once we complete our thorough research and look at other districts and what we think would work for our students in our district, and then make recommendations to each campus's Foundations Committee on what we feel would be proper use of cell phone.
There's a licensed professional counselor. Her name is Tessa Stuckey. She's done many presentations for the district, and she put together a short video for us. We will stop the video around the 21-minute 7-second mark because it is a little bit longer than what we have time for today. But if you wouldn't mind watching it, it's a pretty powerful resource to understand the harm that could be happening to our students with continued screen time during the day.
And I would like to make a disclaimer that Tessa will be back in our district to discuss cell phone usage and other topics on the 15th of May, Grand Oaks High School, 6:30 p.m.
Hi, my name is Tessa Stuckey. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the Woodlands. I grew up in the Woodlands. I graduated from the Woodlands High School in 2004, and now I have 4 kids that are attending CISD schools. Working as a therapist, I work primarily with teenagers, and now I've started working a lot with parents because so much has changed since all of us were young and we were growing up, that parenting looks very different. Part of my research working with teenagers had to do a lot with the suicidal thinking and the self-harm stuff because it was so prevalent and it's still so prevalent. And I went on a journey to figure out what was causing such turmoil in our community nationwide, and that there's been a huge cultural shift that has happened for today's youth. And that's what I want to talk about today with you. I know I only have about 15-20 minutes, so I'm going to kind of, I don't want to say rush through, but I'm going to definitely skip over some of the fluff and the things that maybe aren't as important as whenever I have a full hour to share. But I do want to share with you that I did write a book. It's called For the Sake of Our Youth. Let me run and get it really quick. So I wrote the book For the Sake of Our Youth, and it is a really easy read. It's a small little book, but it depicts all of my research on how the culture has changed and what we need to do to help our kids and their mental health growing up in today's world. So I'm going to share my screen to my presentation really quick, if I can figure it out. That you guys can see it. So I'm definitely going to move through some things, but I always want to remind parents that we are in a place right now in this moment that does not have any best we can with the information that we have. I just have different information because I work with teenagers on a daily basis, and I feel pulled to share that with parents as much as possible because all the things that I'm learning in my office, I would not know if it wasn't for my job, like these words, but we don't have time for that. Those are my kids. I know they're so cute. Aren't they so cute? So working with teenagers, working in the mental health field, we all know what causes dark thoughts, trauma, abuse, substance abuse, neglect, mental illness. And what I was seeing in my practice here in the Woodlands was all these kids were struggling with suicidal thinking or dark thoughts of some sort, but they didn't have the history of trauma or abuse or mental illness. So that was what was really baffling for me. This comes from my book. I feel that kids are lonelier than they've ever been. They're more disconnected than they've ever been because they're addicted to their screens. The screens have created a world of overwhelming pressure to be perfect. They have little to no resilience because they haven't had to build any coping skills. that everything feels so impossible for them. And so what I have found is that everything that my clients and teenagers are going through today, as far as the emotions and the desires and the needs, are all the same. That part has not changed, but the circumstances have changed tremendously. This is a typical kind of an example of a typical client that I might see: someone with good grades, has a great social media following. Their parents are very interactive and involved with them, but they are spending way too much time on screens and social media. The average age is 7 to 9 hours. I've had clients as high as 17, 18 hours within a 24-hour period. That's their daily average screen use. They're getting about 4 hours of sleep a night, and kids need 10 to 12 hours to truly feel motivated and develop properly. Exposure to pornography, the average age is 8 years old. That's always a hard one for me to say out loud, and it's a hard one for a lot of people to hear. Loneliness has increased tremendously. Everyone describes their friends as being surface level. There's been a huge increase of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, and self-harm. Sorry, something happened. I always want to make a big distinction between mental health and mental illness. Not everyone has mental illness, but everyone has mental health. And if we don't cater and nurture our mental health, then it can turn into a mental illness. So 2 areas is teaching our kids to build resilience and rebuilding some connection, because those are the 2 things that are lacking in today's culture. And these are what I have found are the biggest contributors. Our kids growing up with immediate gratification left and right. Everything is instant. There's an instant fix for everything. The problem is it's creating some avoidance culture where they're not actually having to face their emotions, and they're not having to learn to cope, because they just simply do this instead and get lost in TikTok, Instagram, whatever. Overwhelming pressure, the need to be perfect with everything, especially their social media presence. Our kids, their brains are so impressionable. Their prefrontal cortex is still developing, and that has a long ways to go. They don't stop getting developed until the ages 25 to 28 years old. And that's all the cognitive thinking and the impulse control and the emotional regulation managing area. So when our kids are so impressionable and they see something online, then they are going to be influenced by that. And so loneliness leads to attention seeking, and attention seeking, totally natural for all of us to want attention. However, we want to make sure that we are seeking attention in a healthy way. And what we're seeing more than ever is attention seeking via social media, a lot of the victim phishing, a lot of the provocative behavior online, that sort of thing. And then finally, another big problem that is contributing to all of this is the screen addiction. So staying up too late because of all the dopamine they're getting from scrolling TikTok, scrolling Instagram, even Pinterest, that sort of thing. Really quick, grow through what we go through. We want our kids to grow through what they're going through, not grow into the internet. And so what's happening is they are confused, because that's a natural part of development in adolescence, but they are now experiencing influenced confusion, which is what happens when they seek answers via internet. I kind of already talked about this. However, I just want to touch on the fact that the suicide rate for adolescents is at an all-time high. It's the second leading cause of death for adolescents in our nation. Specifically in Texas, it is as well. And a lot of suicide talk has become very casual and normalized for our kids. It's been romanticized and glorified, and it's causing a big cultural shift to where they are seeking that kind of attention as well. I'm not going to go into that. I talked to parents about how all tech is not bad tech. So tech is fine as long as it's being used to be productive, as long as it's being used to be creative. What we want to avoid is for our kids to use it when they are bored or going through something emotional, and it creates that screen addiction. Obviously, our kids are growing up in a tech world, and there will be tech in their future. We know that to be very true. So we want to make sure that while we have our kids under our roof, we are teaching them how to be on tech in a responsible manner and to use it for productivity and creativity. We want to make sure that we are aware of what it's actually doing to the brain. When our kids are on technology, playing video games or chatting with friends on Snapchat, they feel that they are connecting with them because they are getting a big amount of dopamine dripped into their brain. But what's happening is they're lacking the chemical of oxytocin, and oxytocin is needed for true connection, to feel connected and have a deep relationship with someone. That's why we're seeing all these teens experiencing the surface level friends, because they're only getting half of the equation. So when they get online, they get a huge dopamine dump rather than the natural drips we're supposed to get with dopamine, and it becomes an overload. And then that's when you're going to see these tantrums that happen when we take the tech away. So we want to teach our kids to build resilience. So we've got that immediate gratification that I was talking about, not wanting to actually face our feelings, but rather using technology as a distraction and an avoidance. And what we're seeing is that starts at a really, really young age. And, as young as 1 or 2 years old, when you're out to eat and you hand your kid the iPad so that they stop fussing, that sort of thing, it becomes the expectation and the habit for your family or for your child, so that when they hit those hormonal years, they are still seeking that instant fix. And as all of you know, there's no instant fix for emotional distress. So with suicide and self-harm and dark thoughts being very prevalent and on the forefront of their mind because they're so impressionable, they want that instant fix. They go to that a lot quicker than any generation previous. We already talked about impressionable minds, but I do want to touch on early exposure to pornography, predators online, and sextortion. A lot of people don't know what sextortion is. Sextortion is when someone online has tricked your child into sending them a nude photo and then threatening, blackmailing them and saying, I'm going to blast this nude photo all over the place if you don't send me $3,000 or what have you. And that is happening like crazy right now. And we're actually seeing suicides being caused from victims of sextortion. And then, of course, cyberbullying. We all know what cyberbullying is, but it can be very, very sneaky, like purposefully posting on your story something fun you're doing because you know the girl who you purposefully didn't invite is going to see the story, things like that, or taking a picture, tagging everyone in it except for the one girl you don't like. That it can be that sneaky. And of course, it can be more on the extreme side of people texting or DMing your child, telling them make the world a better place by just killing yourself. And that is happening a lot too. In the world has instant access to your child via social media and the internet, or even just texting, and they have open reign to say whatever they want to our kids. So if another person is going through something and they are hurting and they are obviously not fully developed in their brain, they might act impulsively and say something to your child that is very hurtful, and that can create a really bad situation because your child is also lacking that impulse control. Pressure, body image, FOMO, fear of missing out. Social life is on 24/7. Our kids don't ever get a break from seeing what their friends are doing or feeling left out, or just a break from talking to their friends like we all need. Our social batteries get exhausted, and our kids don't ever get that break a lot of times. And then something that I call mental illness hypochondria, which is just the act of self-diagnosing from a person making a 30-second TikTok video about bipolar disorder. And like I said earlier, their minds are so impressionable that they absorb that. They are influenced by that as if, oh, I relate to that one thing that they said about bipolar disorder. I must have it too. Learning to cope. I like to talk to parents about allowing the struggle, allowing the struggle. So one of the hardest things as a parent is to watch our own kids struggle. And so a lot of times we like to fix their problems when in reality, we need to learn to step back a little bit and let our kids struggle so that they can learn how to build that resilience and learn how to get through it on their own emotionally. That builds that resilience and that emotional maturity. So therefore, as a parent, we have to practice sitting in our own discomfort and regulating our own emotions when we are stepping back, because that is really, really uncomfortable for us. I like to talk to parents about the 4 C's, which is you start off as the commander when they're itty bitty, you're doing everything for them and you're telling them what to do. Then you turn into the coach where you're guiding and teaching. Then you turn into their cheerleader, their biggest support system. And then eventually you want to get to the consultant. And that's when they're off. They've left the nest and you now are their consultant, and you can let them confide in you and help guide them more on that level. The power of boredom. I'm a very big fan of boredom for our kids. It's the first very uncomfortable emotion for them to get to feel when they are really little. And so it's really important for us to allow that boredom so that they can learn how to cope. These are just the questions I ask everyone in order to build their coping skills. What do you like to do that's fun? What do you like to do that's relaxing? And what can you do when you're angry that can feel a little bit relieving? So I have all my clients come up with 3 to 5 options for each of these. My only rule is video games, social media, and scrolling on your phone in any way, shape, or form is not allowed. The only one I do allow is a movie for relaxation. But a lot of kids have a really, really, really hard time filling this out. When you ask a 10-year-old, what do you like to do for fun? And their only answer is video games or text my friends. What's happening in our world that 10-year-olds aren't going outside to ride their bike, jump on the trampoline, go swimming, play with their dog, create art or play the piano or make bracelets, whatever. They have a really, really hard time answering these questions. And that is where we come in as the adults to sit down, kind of brainstorm with them and force them to think of other things that they can do with their time. We want to see balance and we want to see them processing their emotions. Oh, emotional hygiene is a practice that I am not going to get to today, but it's an exercise I do with my clients to understand their own personalized self-care formula that covers their physical needs, social needs, emotional needs, and spiritual needs. Let's see, we already talked about what the connection online is doing to the brain. So loneliness, we talked about that already. Loneliness leads to unhealthy attention seeking and unhealthy thoughts for a lot of kids. But as you know, everyone in this world, it is inevitable that we are going to experience loneliness. Loneliness can last for a day, it can last for months, it can last for years. It's not fun, it's horrible, it's a dark place to be in, but it does happen. We want to make sure that when our kids experience loneliness, they can power through it and not go to that dark place of wanting to hurt themselves or in their life, or just avoid it by getting all these dopamine dumps from their phone. We also want to make sure they're not seeking attention via social media and is really important. Quality time together with friendship quality. So what I teach parents is you don't have to be best friends with your kid. I don't even want you to be best friends with your kid at all. But you can have a relationship with your child where you spend time together that has some qualities that you pull from friendships, like taking interest in each other or spending time together without the lecturing, nagging, reminding part of it, but truly just that quality time together spent so that they feel comfortable with you. And once they feel comfortable with you, then they will open up to you about the bigger things. So that means you might have to join them in their comfort zone. So if your child likes to play basketball, then you get your butt outside and you start shooting hoops with them. You don't even have to spur up the conversation, but once they are comfortable with you, they will start opening up. Already talked about attention. Attention is a natural desire. It means we want to feel important and we want to feel valued in this world. Totally healthy for us to want attention. We just want to make sure we stay on the healthy attention seeking and not the unhealthy attention seeking. And I'll tell you that online, on social media, not only are they going to get that unhealthy attention, but unhealthy attention is being encouraged via TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and whatnot, so that they feel the need to keep doing those things. Now, when we spend time with our child, and I wonder where I am on time. I don't even know where I am on time. I hope I'm not going over. When we are spending time with our child, they might tell us something that we don't always want to hear. So we have to practice responding versus reacting. And responding is just a slower process to get to the point of expressing your response, but making sure that they know that you heard them. So it's validating the emotions that you are hearing, and then you express your thoughts with that. And then seeking balance, which I'll talk about in just a second. This is an acronym I love for the responding: love, listen openly, validate, then express. So it's just a slower way. Instead of saying, "What were you thinking?" you say something like, "Okay, you made a difficult decision. I don't know how you got to that point, but I'm so thankful you told me about it, and I want to talk about this later. This is a shock to me. I'm kind of thrown off. Let me think about it first, and then we'll talk about it tonight," or whatever you feel comfortable saying. And then seeking balance. We want to make sure our kids are getting decent sleep. If kids are getting 4, 5, 6 hours a night, they're getting half of what they actually need. Now, I know 10 to 12 hours is not always realistic in today's world, but we do need to prioritize sleep a bit more. And that means we might have to cut off their phone usage at a certain time every night so that they can get better sleep. We can only control so much. So we can control, for the most part, what is on our kids' phones, but we can't control what's happening at other families' houses and what's happening on the bus and that sort of thing. So the most important thing that I want parents to understand is your relationship with your child is crucial. You want to make sure that you are able to have these conversations about pornography, sex, violence, predators, what is happening online, that sort of thing, so that you can be aware that when they get on the bus and Timmy shows them a video of something, they come home and they talk to you about it. Otherwise, they are having to process that alone. Again, not all tech is bad. Social media is not going away. However, it's best to delay it, and we can teach our kids how to be on it. We want to make sure that social media use is purposeful and we're not using it for mindless coping or mindless scrolling. We want to make sure our kids are using it to actually, oh my gosh, I'm getting thrown off. We want to make sure that they are not using it to mindlessly scroll or using it as a quote unquote coping skill. We want to make sure that it is being used with purpose and intention. I always joke, TikTok is the one I hate the absolute most. So if you know me at all, you know that I hate TikTok the most, because TikTok is literally everything I'm talking about all in one app, and they're all obsessed with it. It's all they can talk about. It's all where all the trends are. It's no bueno. Snapchat and Instagram is a risk, letting our kids have that as well. I won't go into this little thing. Hold on. Well, I will. I feel like TikTok and social media is like what our parents scared us of, that white van with that stranger, but with all the frilly things, maybe offering us candy, and our kids are falling victim to that, and then they're getting their sweet little souls taken away from them. And I know that sounds dramatic, but that is truly what is happening with our kids today, getting on technology and using social media before they are.
So I know Tessa couldn't be here, but I just want to very publicly say thank you for her doing that for us. I think it's really a powerful message, and it ties back to the mental health committee and the conversations that we had there on what we can do to help our kids. And so the Shack, we have a unique opportunity as the Shack to come alongside the district and alongside the board and make recommendations on what we think is the best thing to keep our students healthy. And so, right now, it's a campus-based decision, and in no way would a Shack recommendation overstep or overrule any autonomy from the district or from the board. But the Shack does have a responsibility in helping make sure that the recommendations that come out of the Shack are consistent with the community values, and we think are in the best interest of our students. So when the mental health committee met, this was a big concern, and I think you can see why, when you listen to what Tessa presented and the potential harm to our students. And so I would, open it for discussion on what you guys think about a potential recommendation for a district-wide policy. Granted, it wouldn't, the district or the board could come to us and say, well, what would that look like? That's completely fine. But, our Shack as a whole probably should come to consensus on this topic. What do we think is the healthiest thing for our kids at school in regards to their access to a screen during educational time. So I really think this is something we need to talk about, and would open the floor for discussion.
I've noticed that I've looked at schools, and junior highs tend to have more. I mean, the kids are really into that. But one school I was in there, when they walked in, there's like a shoe rack, if you will. But that's where your phone's in there. We're doing school, and then on your way out, you get your phone back up. And I like that. I've been in other schools where it's hard to get them off their phone. I mean, I've had them, anywhere, okay, I don't want to see your phones, your phone's away. And I've had them tell me, no, not putting the phone away.
Okay. Ms. Jeffers?
I had a question really, do we have an idea of kind of the range of what is currently in place? So from nothing to, I know that some of the high schools have kind of a pocket to put their place. Do we have that?
Yes, ma'am, that's the exact work foundation. So you'll see some campuses with the shoe racks, some will have little carts where the kids place it. The foundations committee, I've actually heard of some great ideas on some campuses where they have basically assigns kind of like your champs that foundations will help implement, but it'll say phone usage allowed today to work on project, or no phone usage at all. So it's just whatever the foundations committee decides what's best for that campus.
I think my experience with that so far, and talking to others, my own personal experience, is it varies a lot. I know a lot of elementaries and intermediates have a way for the day, where basically during school hours you're not permitted to have the phone out. And it's in your backpack, turned off, where it's not a distraction, not used at lunch, not used in the classroom. I can tell you in our experience, we went to junior high, there's phones out all day. And so it varies broadly depending on the campus. And I think that's why I would like to see a district-wide policy, because there's no reason we need to have that variance. We see, based on what Tessa just told us, and we also have seen it ourselves. I mean, when we had our subcommittee meeting, it was amazing. Every parent there had something to say about how they've negatively seen cell phones impact their own children. And then, we had 2 doctors present, and you guys brought your own professional opinions and things you've seen, in the medical field. And so I think it's all very clear to us that that is not, it's not helping our academic performance. It's certainly not helping behavior in the classroom. It's a huge distraction. It leads to cyberbullying. And then, as Tessa mentioned, all the things around mental health, increased anxiety, depression. I have some stats that one of the follow-ups in the meeting was to share some stats. So I just wanted to share a few that I found. 35% of teenagers who spend 3 hours or more a day on electronic devices are at a 35% higher risk of suicide than those who spend less than 1 hour. That's huge. 28% of 8th graders who are heavy users of social media have a 27% higher risk of depression than kids who exceed the average time playing sports or hanging out with friends. And then lastly, 80% of school principals said cell phones at school have a negative impact on academics and social development. And this is Pew Research. It's a legit research company. So, I think those are very telling. I think, as Bryce had said, as a SHAC, I think we have an opportunity to impact how cell phones are used in our schools. Our kids are there 7 to 8 hours a day. I know I can tell from own experience in junior high, there are times kids are on phones 1 to 2 hours, maybe more a day. It's more than you would think. It's free time, it's lunch. I know moms who their kids have come home and said, this is in our district, my kid really wants to hang out with friends at lunch, but everyone else is on their phone, so they hop on their phone. There's no, we're really, really doing our kids a disservice when we don't offer human connection. We don't give kids a choice. Kids will choose the device every time because that's what everyone else is doing. It's easy, and so I think we have to take the choice away from them as the adults and work in their best interest.
Hi, Lance Marigold. I would say, do I hold it down as I'm talking?
Press it.
Just press it once?
Yeah.
No, that's all. Okay, there we go. Is that better? One of the sad things about social media is, in addition to it being just so prevalent, is they're experiencing everyone else's highlight reel, So it's like, the ordinary things like taking out the trash or mowing the yard, they're not seeing videos on that. It's everyone dancing to some song or, you know, that sort of thing. And so I know that when we had, with our daughter, taken her phone away because grades were down or things like that, when, you know, it's for a week or more, she'll find other things to do. And one of the things is she was given a lot of canvases and paint a couple Christmases ago. And so that stuff came out, and she started like using that and doing that and like doing some really good stuff. So the sad part is it's the responsibility is on us as parents to help, you know, control that. And you know, the unfortunate part is that there's so much that we don't control, really, with them. And when we recognize that, and then we figure, well, what do we control? You know, it's like we have to provide them shelter, we have to provide them food, not necessarily preferred food, you know, and then use some of the leverage we have because we're interested in what's in your column, okay, and you're spending too much time on that sort of thing. So leverage the things that we do, you know, like if they're not doing chores, don't provide them, you know, income to, and so the reason that's difficult is because then that interacts, or sometimes we just want the end of the day just to like chill, and we can't afford to do that. It's impacting them too greatly. So
I don't know how I missed the mental health subcommittee meeting. So I apologize. But yes, cell phones is a big thing, and there is a lot of negative. But when we say we're gonna lock their phones up in school, that makes me a bit nervous. When my kids started going to junior high, they got it at 7th grade. And in COVID, one of the kids went 7th grade, so he didn't get it till he could walk to middle school, to junior high. And my purpose was, if you need to reach me, because I feel when they get older, the teachers are depending on, or the school administration, I felt, were like, if you are a big boy and you could, or a big girl, you can handle it, and parents don't need to be in the midst of everything. So if you miss your paper, you miss something, you handle it. And I really don't think 12, 13, 14-year-olds can do that. So I have had calls. So the good thing about software, I have had calls, my kid hiding under the table, teacher won't listen to me, bawling. A 13-year-old boy bawling under a chair is not okay. So I did go and pick him up, and I'm taking my son home, but tell you that this is not about a pencil. It's not about a number 2 25-cent pencil. This is more, and this is repeatedly him asking the staff. So I don't know if we could, I know that the teachers don't have time to respond to every drama, because I do sub, and you know, much of it is drama. But then I have had calls on, this happened, or I'm in the bathroom and somebody is banging on the door. What do I do? So if the phones were locked, I wouldn't get that call. So where do those kids go when they are not bullied, but when they are having a situation? What happens to them? How do they reach out? Because I felt like they didn't, because they are lonely. They didn't have a social group, and obviously the teachers were not listening or being observant about that.
Thank you for that point, and that's something that we talked about as well with the subcommittee. We need to go back to our skills with our students on teaching them how to stop, talk, find that adult, tell them what's going on. We're losing those skills because of technology. Typically groups are sending out messages and trying to actually solve their own problem, but they're creating more problems instead of going to adults that can help them mediate. We're working with our students on peer mediation. We're bringing more with our Department of Resolution Center. They're going to train more campuses with peer mediation. That's all skills that our kids can use moving forward instead of the technology used in the cell phones and the social media. And you know, our peer right now, the kids think that they can peer mediate through Snapchat. I'm going to create this big group on Snapchat because it'll all disappear, but that's not what it is. So that's one of the things that we want to work with the kids on. How do you work with the situation when you need something, you need to talk to an adult, How does that happen without having to call home? But remember that they can also call home from any classroom, from any, well, we have phones available, and that's something that we can work with the staff on also. But that's exactly why we have this committee, so that we can work on those skills.
No, there's been times that, you know, if I have a headache, it's not important enough, so you go back and sit down. And I was a sub that's also said, you know, please sit down, because it was a paper cut, you could just do that with a band-aid. But no, there's been things where it wasn't important enough to be addressed.
I'd also like to mention that they're a lot more tech savvy because they grew up with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't get a cell phone until I was 35. Yeah. I keep telling that to my kids, when did you cell phone? I didn't get it until I was 35. You're 35, we'll talk about it. but anyway, I was in the school the other day, and they were all getting on stuff on their phones. You know, okay, we had a time in the class. Okay, you got done with your classwork. Go ahead. And I go ask them, how do you do that? Because I get on my phone and I try to do things, and even though I'm hooked up to the CISD website or whatever Wi-Fi, I can't do things. How do you do that? Oh, we do this VPN. They told me how to download the app and whatever. So they can, with that VPN, they can do whatever they want. No matter what, if CISD is trying to stop them doing something.
Oh, my son was told, so we blocked there, so whenever they need to download something, it goes to my husband. So there's a 16-year-old sitting on the lunch, can you download this game? Please, Dad, please. And, so there is a younger crowd, 9, 8 years old. Oh, let me show you. You go to the app, download your father's, because it's a family share. So you go to that account, download the game, and you can still play, and your dad would never know. So yes, they are very tech-savvy.
And I just wonder if it would be possible for us to do some, or recommend some marketing campaign for posters or things that would go in the school that might say, hey, write your own story. Quit living vicariously through someone else's. Paint, play the piano, like some of the things she talked about. And that's not going to be all of it, but I was just sitting here thinking, well, what could we as the Shack do to come alongside parents and help supplement that, because, you see at restaurants, sometimes it's sad, and, a whole family sitting there and everybody's on their phone. Like, this is the time to connect. So we can't fix that, but in terms of things that are actionable steps, perhaps something clever that has a rewards-based thing, or I don't know. But that was just my thought on that.
As Bryce had mentioned before, I mean, one of the responsibilities in TEC 2804 is for SHAC to make recommendations regarding policies, strategies, specifically regarding student mental health. And so I think this absolutely falls within that category as far as how cell phones and devices are used on campus. And so that's certainly within our purview as SHAC. That doesn't require the board to do that, of course, but that would be, as the community, what we feel like we want the board to make recommendations so the board understands where we stand as the SHAC. And so me personally, I would like to see us offload those decisions about cell phone use from each campus and come up for each, CISD elementary, this is the CISD policy. For intermediates, this is the policy. For high schools, this is the policy. And we don't have to work out necessarily the details here, but I think that ensures consistency. It takes the load off the teachers, it takes the load off the administrators, and it puts it back on, board and district admin, and which is where I think it should sit. And I think that's where honestly most ISDs do it. It's not a campus-wide at your discretion. I think so. I would like for SHAC to recommend, to the board, let's have a district-wide cell phone policy. I guess going a step further, I really like the away for the day cell phone option. I know Tess and I spoke about it. She's supportive of it as well. And basically, we do this in elementaries, we do it in intermediate. And for some reason, when it comes to junior high and high school, we stop doing that. But basically the concept is during school hours, the cell phone's off, it goes in your backpack. And so from a security perspective, in true emergencies, your child will be able to access their cell phone. I personally like that as well. Heaven forbid, having a shooter or something crazy going on at school, I do want them to have that access and that opportunity to reach out. But that's not that's rare if ever, right? And so the day-to-day basis would be phones away, phones off, and there's, consequences if phones come out.
And
I
it's
completely
not about the
agree.
phone, it's about the health component of it, and that's why we're.
Well, we want them, while they're at school, to focus on school. And so, I would question why we would have a different policy for junior high or high school. Because in my opinion, if something needs to be done electronically at school, they need to be provided the equipment. And to me, that should be a school-provided computer to do it, and not rely on cell phones, because not everybody has enough money to have a cell phone. So you can't tell a student, you have to have a cell phone and this app to do something for school, because we're eliminating people that are low income, and that's not giving everybody the same opportunity. So to me, I think a standard away for the day, but they remain in their backpacks, not on their person that they can pull out, in their backpacks. Everybody brings a backpack from kindergarten, I'm pretty sure, all the way up. And that way, in case of emergencies, it's on, they know where it is, but it isn't accessible. They don't go to the bathroom with it, because then they would go to the bathroom and get on it or whatever. And I think it does need to have consequences. If this, if there's an infraction, the kids are very clear about what happens to it. It gets taken away, and you either don't get it back or whatever. But I do think that will free up the kids' minds while at school, because their job during the hours of 8 and 4 or whatever their school hours, the school bell rings, phones up. Your job is to do school, and they're going to provide you any electronics needed for that. And otherwise, no electronics other than what the school district provides. And I think that's reasonable. That's what it was like when we grew up. I don't see any reason that can't be the same way today. And I think it's really going to help with the mental health in schools. But also, I think, we'll see test scores go up. Kids will be focusing on what the teachers are talking about, and it'll help the teachers, and to deal with. They won't have to deal with the no's. No, I'm not going to put it up. There'll be severe consequences. They'll know what they are, and then they won't want to have those consequences, because they'll want to get on it at 4 o'clock when the bell rings. So I think it's a good idea, and I think we should work as a SHAC to make that recommendation. And I don't know, is that something that we can do, or do we need kind of like a subcommittee to discuss that?
Well, when you look through the recommendations from the state of what the SHAC is responsible for doing, it's very well within our realm to make the recommendation. This is the SHAC stance on this topic. For example, if it sounds like we have consensus in regards to there needing to be a district-wide cell phone policy. That seems like it's a consensus here. The details of the policy to consider the safety concern and the way the campus is right now. Some campuses rely on technology to access. When I drop my daughter's lunch off, it's like text your student, let her know her lunch is here. So there are some nuances about the policy that right now are outside the purview of the information we have to delineate the policy. But I think it's very fair to say that we want a district-wide policy because we think it's in the best mental health of our students. And I don't want to minimize the safety concern. I also have concerns, just given what's happened in the last month at 2 of the campuses. So, I think the consensus is here. The details of the consensus I think we need to work on. But that's also something that the district or the board needs to say, hey, could you help us? And I'm happy to facilitate that. We can set up the group. And I think I'm someone of action, so I think if we're going to make a recommendation, we should be able to back it up with what we think it should look like. But I don't know that we have all those details right now. So if someone wants to make a motion that the SHAC supports a district-wide cell phone policy, I think that's very, very appropriate. And it sounds like that's the pulse from the conversation. Delineating the details of the policy, it sounds like we have a little bit of different opinion, and we might want to talk about that further. So discussion on those point to that suggestion.
Cool.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Well,
And I think you said when y'all met that the intention was then to research a little bit more and look into what kind of recommendations you would make to the Foundations Committee. And maybe before we agree as a group that we need a district-wide one, that we actually put that on the table and carry through with the plan that the committee came up with, where let's research it, let's see what else is out there before we decide as a group that we need a policy for the district.
And I'm
As a whole.
confused,
I'm
and
just
that,
not
is
sure
there,
why we
is there
would.
no policy at all? Or is it just that?
Campus-based.
There is
Campus
no policy, it's
protocol.
Okay.
campus-based.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, Ms. Bridgewater?
So right now, every campus, they have some sort of cell phone protocol that they use, but it's
Okay.
it's determined by the Foundations team.
Okay.
And which
okay.
consists of teachers, administrators, counselors, on this Foundations team. And so they survey the campus, talk to teachers, and they determine what type of cell phone, protocol they'll have on campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask, so right now the policies are, I know it varies by campus and it varies, elementary versus, intermediate and middle school and high school. But I guess, so are there some campuses where it's like you could just be on your, like, teachers are okay with that? Or like where they can be on their phone potentially in class, or maybe ask them to be based on curriculum, or how
So-
is that?
As a former administrator on a junior high school campus, I can tell you that our Foundations Committee, we determined that we would use the pockets, the shoe racks, to
Okay.
place phones. And we did have feedback from parents that said, we told our students, do not place said phone in the shoe rack. They keep it on their person at all times. We allow them to use it if they need to contact us. And so that's why we, as a committee, we need to determine what we recommend. I also believe that we need parent education when it comes down to cell phone usage. So bringing Tessa in the district, talking in all of the different feeder patterns, so they can understand our concern, and we're not just saying, oh, we're taking a phone away from you. And then we also need to educate parents on there are phones available in classrooms. Some of the members tonight did not know that there's a phone in the classroom that a student can use in case of emergency if they want to contact mom for left my lunch, left PE clothing. Like, we have all kind of reasons, that especially junior high, they forget everything. And so that's just what we're saying, that we really need to do our proper research and do our proper education to all, so that they can understand why we say that cell phone usage should be limited during school hours.
My son is at Macala, and he's texting me every time he finishes his work at school that he wants time, because he has no time, never, only when he's on the bus. So every time he finishes a work, he's asking me time to play. My answer always, every single moment, is no, because you are at school. Read a book, look at the ceiling, think about anything, but you are not going to have time in your phone to play a game. So I think that regardless the age of the kid is at school to learn to socialize, to learn math, to learn to write a letter, or to think, to communicate, whatever. The phone is out of the picture, always, from the time he enters to school until the time he leaves the school. After that, well, it depends on each family. But at school, the phone is out, because they are not getting anything. And you saw daughter, and I saw with my own daughter that when they did something and the phone is out for a month, sometimes 2 months, my daughter, 13 years old, 2 months, they change. The behavior change. They are not more aggressive because when they get in that thing that, and it's like they're bark again. And when the phone is out of their life, they came back as a social person. So they communicate, they can enjoy a moment in the family during dinner without thinking in the picture and that thing that they do all the time. And I think it's crucial. The phone is out of the school. And I think the policy must be in the Conroe ISD, not every campus, because if it's on every campus, then always there's going to be a parent or a father or some, oh no, I need because my son, I don't know what. No, they can access the phone, yes. And it's true, my son called me several times from the phone that is on the classroom. And it works perfectly. I forgot my lunch, I forgot this, or I forgot that, and the phone works. So they don't need the cell phone. They don't need it.
Has the school considered a policy before at all? Just curious.
The
I mean, if it
district,
was,
you mean,
yeah,
like
the district, and maybe was it, had they had explored it, had they struck it down, or has this been?
I don't know. I know that that's been a discussion,
Yeah.
and I think that it was decided that it would be the campus level that they would address that.
And no campuses have made a
So campuses
policy
have
that Laura's
so
talking
we were
about?
just talking about that right before you got here.
Okay.
The campuses have a protocol for that's okay when phones are out and when they're not. So.
Like
But it's
McCullough
very
had it, you know,
it's
not
very
to have
loose
it,
and it
only
varies
have
a
it at
lot.
lunch, and now they have it all day.
Well, and even having it at lunch, I would think it keeps them from interacting and doing other things. Like the other part of school is the social interaction that you get, and people are choosing not to do
Which
that.
goes against what that lady was saying. I heard it on YouTube.
Well, I was just going to say, in addition to that, not only is it keeping them from interacting with their peers, but there is actively negative action resulting from it. There's bullying. I am still in elementary, but I have friends in junior high that their daughter has been a victim of someone taking a picture of her at lunch and spreading it around and kind of having that blackmailing situation. So that is happening in our district now. And so I feel like in one way, not only are we focusing on the academic, but we're also, preventing these negative bullying types of interactions, which both are improving mental health. And then what I love is that in this discussion, we'd be actively educating our parents and families, and so hopefully then we'd have less of the pushback, because I'm a PTA president at my campus. I know that our parents and families are spirited and protective, and I am too, I get it. But I do feel like maybe us moving forward with some kind of recommendation or initiative, it's win-win, because that way we're proactively educating our families in why this is important.
The education component is extremely important, because that behavior doesn't just go on at lunch at school. Matter of fact, it happens a lot less, that type of behavior at school with the phones. It happens all the time, weekends, nights, where the pictures are taken and sent, the bullying behavior occurs, threats happen. It's the education, especially for parents, is going to be huge in changing behavior.
So I guess the question, maybe asking the question a different way, I think there clearly seems to be concern with cell phone use in the school. There seems to be support for not using it at school and having cell phones away. So I guess asking it from the flip side, is there anyone that has concerns with having cell phones away and not used during school?
I know often you will get,
aside from the emergency that we talked about, like true emergency.
you might get some parents that will say, if there was an active shooter at the school, if there was an event like that, they want their kid to be able to call them, and you would get pushback for taking a phone away from some parents who need to know immediately that their kid is okay.
And I agree with that. I guess that's what I was trying to say before is, I like the away for the day because it's not saying put your cell phone in a lockbox for the day. It's saying put it in your backpack, turn it off, put it in your backpack so that if there is an emergency, you have access, a true emergency. Otherwise, use the classroom phone. But I guess the question is, is there anyone who has concerns with that approach where you turn the cell phone off, put it in the backpack, it's not used at lunch, it's not used in the classroom, not in the bathroom?
I just have concern with enforcement on that. Only anybody who's working there in enforcement the whole time there have a hard enough job. And I just suppose they're a technological way you can enforce it rather than.
Well, but I think they're having a hard time enforcing it now, like.
No, I agree with you.
They're saying like, no, I'm not gonna, so I think either way, it's difficult to enforce, but I think if you make the certain, like the consequence great for the child, like, you get caught, I take it away, you get it back at the end of school, but the second time it happens, we give it to your parents. And now the parents, I guess, I don't know, if the consequence is you can never bring it back or something, then maybe kids won't do it. They'll say, look, I want that phone.
There's ISDs who have implemented this, and it's going very, very well.
I think
I think they're able to get over some of these hurdles, and there's lots of plans and consequences and draft procedures and all kinds of things that we can tap into to utilize. We don't have to create this from scratch.
So Mr. Texador and then Dr. Shelley.
Yeah, I think for the sake of time, I know there's a big concern about this, and we're meeting as a subcommittee again. So bring those concerns so we can meet together and talk about it and see what we come up with a plan from there.
Yeah, I'm on the subject.
Yeah.
But so I think that when someone was talking about how at lunch, like, the students are not interacting with each other, that's like really actually worrisome. Because that social interaction at that age is so important. And so if they're getting, that dopamine dump, like, and not getting that connection, that's what's leading to all these issues in the first place, with the anxiety, depression, and suicide. So,
and fighting, because I watched several videos that are happening around Texas in a particular place, I'm not going to say where, and that is because of the phone, because they are using the phone to videotape the fighting. That is an everyday issue, and there is no consequence for anybody. So we don't want to be in that place, because if we continue this, we are going to reach that place, because the violence exists, and there is. It's not that high as in another areas of Texas, but exists here in Conroe.
well, I would say too that I think change is hard for everybody, right? Like, whenever we went through COVID, people had very different views, but you have to base it on what you have, facts, and, evidence. And there's evidence clearly based on her discussion that this is not healthy for them. And so the purpose of this committee is to make recommendations for the children that are for their health. And so I know there was discussion during that time too of like what policy or whatever, and then the best policy was everybody's going to do the same thing, for the health and well-being, whatever policies they had for the school during COVID, like that's what it was. So I think this is for their mental health. And so I really think, and I've seen kids, it's important, and we're raising a generation that we don't know how to handle because we didn't grow up like that.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You had asked if there was any reason why we felt our kids should have the phone. And other than the safety and the concerns with that, it's kind of funny because I have 10 years between my oldest and my youngest, and we worked so hard with the oldest to get them to use an agenda and to write down, the dates of tests and their homework and things like that. And now with our third, she has now gotten where she uses her phone. It's in her phone, it's in her dates, it's in her notes, and we're just excited that she has a system that works for her to remember everything. So when you said if it's away for the day, I think and she's a freshman in high school, And at College Park, they do put them, I think all of her classes put them in the clear pouches, which I think is great. And then at the end, they go get them. And as long as it's, you know, at the very end, and that's when she puts it in, like, Test Friday or, you know, something that she needs to remember. So I do think there is some sort of need, you know, for those kids that use it for that. But also, way back when I taught, it was very, like, clear that some teachers were using reading as a negative thing, you know, like, if a punishment, if you know, whatever, you need to sit down and read. And we learned quickly that, like, it's important to make it a reward so that they learn to love the thing that we want them to love. And I think that with cell phones, that we also need to be super careful that we don't use it as a reward. Like, if you finish your work, guess what? You get to use this wonderful, great, shiny object, you know? So I think also when we set the policy in place, we need to make sure that we're not giving phones out when they're finished with their work, because they do then hurry through it, or then, you know, want to get on a game or finish, you know, a conversation or something. So I think that, like, cell phones should, you know, be put away. I really do think they should be put away. But I think for the older kids, maybe also, like, you know, things change, you know, like the varsity game was changed to 8 o'clock, and they have to, you know, like, let you know different things throughout the day that do happen throughout the day. We just need to teach them to use it responsibly.
So it sounds like there's two things at the table right now, okay? I have not heard a single person say that they are not for a district-wide policy regarding cell phones. The discussion seems to be what that policy looks like, which right now is outside what I think the SHAC has prepared to, to implement. However, every person here has agreed that the cell phone use is detrimental to our students' mental health. So I think it is fair to say that someone can make a motion that the SHAC does recommend a district-wide cell phone policy, but I don't know that we have any other information to provide other details from that. And maybe that's where we take that to the mental health subcommittee and say, we pass this motion if it passes, and we go to our experts over at mental health and let everybody weigh in and come up with what that looks like if we were invited to collaborate from the district and the board about how we could help our students the best. Because the mental health piece, I mean, everyone has voiced their sentiment, and I 1000% agree. So would someone like to make a motion in regards to the SHAC support of a district-wide cell phone policy?
I will make that motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
I want to know what that would look like.
Right now, we don't have the sentiment, so sorry, you got all that? Sorry, Mrs. Torrey. Yeah.
Can you repeat the motion?
Yeah, so the motion is that the SHAC would is in support of a district-wide cell phone policy.
And recommending to the school board.
Yes, and recommending one. We don't have the policy in place, but the idea is that we support consistency amongst our campuses for our students in regards to cell phones. Got it all? Yeah, okay. That's what that was for.
Yeah.
And the motion passed?
Motion carries.
Yeah, motion carries.
And I think to follow up on that, in the subcommittee meeting when we meet, we can develop a suggested policy and come to the table, hopefully at our next meeting, and with some ideas of what we, see other ISDs doing, what's working, and that's maybe where we can talk about, the details. I also think when we make the recommendation to the board, we can also offer, that we're happy to volunteer to give input on that, and that there's lots of resources available of ISDs already doing various different policies that are, successful.
Yes.
Do they have any challenges? Other ISDs that have implemented a stricter policy or a different policy, on what challenges do they face? Because we can, look at that on the front end.
We definitely have homework to do, but us coming to consensus on this as a springboard to move forward is really important. And it doesn't, I hear you on the security concerns. The SHAC saying mental health is an issue, and these phones are causing greater harm to our students with uncontrolled and inconsistent use. That doesn't become more or less true based off what policy is in place. Dr. Shaw and I, in terms of in medicine, we have best practice advisories and consensus statements that that we stand by, and every institution has the opportunity to implement those the way they deem, but it doesn't change the facts of the situation. And I think as a SHAC, what we're saying is the facts of the situation is the amount of time our students are spending in certain areas on their devices is causing them harm and making the school environment more difficult than it needs to be.
I just don't wanna put all our eggs in one basket. I didn't go to the meeting, so is the only problem the cell phone? No, it's not. So maybe we could entertain the other parts of it, because there are people who don't have cell phones who are suicidal or bullying or things, because we were bullied and we didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So that or other parts where what he says, that encourages other areas, canvas, painting and things like that. So when my high schooler comes and he says, oh my God, this happened and I didn't get the vote. He was running for a campaign and he didn't get the vote. So I was like, well, then you didn't fight your campaign well. His own brother didn't vote for him. So what I have told him is, so what? There's other campaigns. So him and his friends are going to start a new club. I was like, so that's what you do. If there is something that you think is broken, then you go with the new values, a new thing, and you start a new thing. And I think that's what we need to encourage our kids, to find more positive venues.
Sure.
And not to get stuck in one place.
Right, and to your concern, the Texas School Health Advisory Council guide, anytime the SHAC makes a recommendation to the board, that recommendation must have an understanding of the community's values, evidence of effectiveness, consideration of fiscal impact, and the school community's needs. So when mental health subcommittee comes, when we start discussing this, those 4 points must be present when we make this recommendation. This is a springboard situation where we're coming together to say as a group, we think this is in our students' best interest, so we're going to work on it and figure out what does that look like. Okay? All right.
It's my understanding that by passing, we can make that formal recommendation publicly to the board that we support a district-wide policy with details to follow.
I
thought it was just, I thought the motion was for the subcommittee to start working on this. I didn't think we were going to go ahead and make an unknown policy recommendation.
No, I don't think we're trying to say. So my understanding was that this motion was to make a recommendation to the board that we as a SHAC are supportive of a district-wide policy, not specifying what the policy is. We're not in a position to know, the details of what that should look like.
And then if they ask us for help,
And
then we would help.
happy to provide details.
That was my understanding. So.
The recommendation to the board has to have these 4 points on it. So
It's too ambiguous to just send them that. Is that what you're saying?
right, we need to have these details here when we make the recommendation to the school board. However, any parent member is able to share what's happening with the SHAC. But the motion was a consensus statement that the SHAC is in support of a district-wide policy for cell phones. That can be, in and of itself, that motion is public record. That can be communicated to the school board at any time. What the details are of that, we have to delineate. And I think that's the piece that will be pushed over towards
the mental health. We meet that. We recognize community values, right?
Mm-hmm.
We recognize there's a problem. We have data to support it. Things that we've all talked about, Tessa provided, I showed some stats. So I do think we have data and evidence to support why we think a district-wide policy would be helpful. We understand the school, there's no financial impact, and what was the other one?
The school community's needs.
School community's needs. I feel like we've checked those boxes by just saying we support a district-wide policy and we're happy to work with the board to align on what the policy is and make our suggestions out of the mental health subcommittee.
I still think we need more research
Yeah.
though. Based on the districts.
I
And
always
see what's happening
tell-
before we go forward. Because I want to make sure that we have a great plan in place and not just here, we're going to work on it later. Let's just do the research first and then go from there.
It might be too polling what some of the schools are doing in our own district and what's working and what's not. And then, then we're not having to search for so far.
Correct.
The other thing that occurred to me is that another component that we may want to discuss in the subcommittee is, can we take something that would, since we know that families are on their phone, could we do something with parents where we have a text-in thing where we take information that, the lady that was on the video, and we, you know, we give helpful tips, you know, to parents. We do that at the church for people who are, you know, wanting to, you know, start, how do I understand the Bible? Well, they can opt in for a text thing, and then they get a daily thing for six weeks. So, you know, I don't know if that could be something that could be provided, but that might be helpful, because that's really where the problem is in the home. You know, yes, as she was saying, it's like the phone isn't the problem, it's the addiction to the phone. So it's the kid and the parent and the school all working in tandem. So anyway, so.
No, I didn't look at this as coming up with all of the, like, the best policy. It was just to see if the school board would be in support of that, and if they want to task us with making recommendations for a policy, then we would be glad to. So just to see if this gains traction with the school board, like, just to kind of set it out there and see if they want to take that up. That's how I looked at this as, is are they in support of exploring or having a district-wide policy? If it's no, then we're doing a lot of work, you know, on the front end on something that they wouldn't support. So that was why I was in favor of just seeing if they were interested in that, and if they maybe they've had discussions already, I don't know. So,
and maybe they put together their own committee to figure it out.
Right. Yeah, so we would be doubling up if so. Just to see if they would be open to that.
Provided all four of those things in this discussion in some way, including Tessa's. I mean, I think we could have those 4 points in our recommendation, and if they accept it and they want to move forward, then I think they would create their own committee.
Or tap into this group.
Right.
As a purpose of the SHAC committee. Like, why would they have their own committee when this one exists?
Or ask us to help them with it, but I would think that if they don't want to do that, I mean, I don't know why it hasn't been done before. There may be reasons that the school board has not chosen to do a district-wide that people in this room don't know about, but.
Well, one thing I do know is that the district doesn't have the finances to give everybody a Chromebook or a laptop, or, you know, so if some schools are utilizing it, it's probably because there's a need for it to continue the process, you know. So there's a lot on the school end and the teacher's end too that we have to consider, and so, you know, it's not easy as just drafting a quick policy. You know, there's a lot of.
Well, and to just bring it back, because we need to move on to the next agenda item. The motion that passed is that the SHAC is in consensus that we need a district-wide policy. That is the motion that has passed. The details of that, we don't have those details. If the board, you know, if we want to have that conversation with the board, then that's the only conversation we can have in regard to the SHAC would like a district-wide policy. I think it would be better if we said the SHAC would like a district-wide policy, and this is the policy we think would look great. And I don't feel like we have that second piece yet.
I hope you're all just agreeing with each other, hey, we move forward on that.
Yeah, so that's, so we're, okay.
Because my vote is that it will go to the subcommittee before it goes to the board, just to see what it looks like. Because as soon as you say district-wide policy, it means you're restricting something, and I don't want the board to know that.
Right,
I mean,
not necessarily, but I think we really.
So I think the vote has to be very
topic.
clear of where it's going. If it's going to subcommittee, yes, my vote's on there. But if it's going to the board, not knowing whatever they would pick, no, my vote's not for that.
The motion was for the SHAC to agree upon a consensus statement, or a district-wide policy for cell phone use. That was the motion at hand. Do we as a SHAC think we need to have a district-wide policy for cell phone use, given what we know of the harms of cell phones? And the vote passed, the motion passed. This is a live stream meeting. Anybody could be watching this. This information can be disseminated in any form. I think it's very responsible and prudent of us to make sure that when we disseminate information that we are prepared and make well-educated decisions. So that's why this will go back over to mental health so we can formulate something that we feel like best represents our communities, all of our communities' concerns. Is that reasonable?
District-wide policy, yes.
Okay. All right, next. Okay, so the next thing is community feedback. I will try to go very quickly.
Do you want to hit E?
Oh, do I want to hit E? Oh, yes. Mr. Costello was here. Mrs. Prejean was here as well, but we were running very behind on time. Garrett?
Sure, yeah. I'll try to speak loud. I don't know if anyone can hear me, but... Okay, so on April 13th, we had a subcommittee to explore the alternative and supplemental health curriculum. We had some technical difficulties, so the Zoom didn't work for some people.
Sarah, I think you need to turn it on. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
All right, thank you. And so on April 13th, we met, and basically this was to explore alternative curriculums for Goodhart Wilcox. And so what we talked about was from the State Board of Education, you know, this is a little bit of dated information, but there's 34 districts that have adopted Goodhart Wilcox, and many districts, including our SBOE rep, do not like or recommend the Goodhart Wilcox textbook, and they're searching for alternatives. So that's what this meeting was just to see what other alternatives there were for Goodhart Wilcox. And one thing that was mentioned is STEAM. It was used in 60 Texas districts that have adopted it, and the committee has invited the CEO of STEAM, Tanya Wade, to present on May 2nd. This May 2nd meeting is at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's an in-person meeting, but a Zoom link will be available as well, and for all of SHAC to join if they want. So at this point, we're not, you know, there's not a recommendation to switch over. STEAM was the only thing that we have heard about. So as we hear of other things that meet TEAC's requirements, we're very much open to the committee, subcommittee, and all of SHAC is obviously open to exploring those things. And but that's what we've heard about, so that's why we're inviting a STEAM. There was a comment made about making health optional to graduate. There was a little survey that Mamie sent out with local school districts. It seemed like many or most did not have health as a requirement to graduate, that it was optional. But with comments made at the last meeting here at SHAC, you know, there's things that are lumped into the Goodhart Wilcox health curriculum that we have to make sure, the school has to make sure that those things are taught. Like one example that was mentioned was CPR. We don't know what those other items are. So before a recommendation to the school board that this is optional, you know, I think there should be a plan in place to cover those other areas so we have all the bases covered. The subcommittee, you know, was unanimous. Everybody voiced the goal is to make the health curriculum as meaningful as possible versus a class students have to take to graduate. So the idea is not just another class, but how can we make this more meaningful and impactful for students? And that was it.
Any questions or comments? Okay. For community feedback, it was noted that the consent form that we had previously approved was lacking language in regards to how to purchase the Goodhart Wilcox materials. So this is being presented for approval of the SHAC. There's an additional sentence that's being added, or that we would like to add to the consent form so parents are able to more easily access the link to purchase the items. The sentence is the second bullet point. Parents may use this link to purchase a copy of the curriculum materials from the publisher at the price that does not exceed the price per unit paid by the district. And there's the link. That is the only change to the three of the current consent forms, the 6th grade form and then the 8th through 12th grade, both the dating violence and the human sexuality consent forms. And then I just cut and paste a copy of where that sentence falls from the consent form so everyone understands where that's located. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay, can we have anyone want to make a motion to approve this single additional sentence to the consent, those 3 consent forms?
I'll motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Westover. Second, all in favor? update. Okay. All right. And then last but never least, our SHAC email is up and running, so that's very positive. We've had 7 emails total. We're working through the kinks on where people can access it on the webpage. We had 2 parent emails come through both on April 6th. One parent was commenting regarding the use of the Procter & Gamble video for the growth and development used in 5th and 6th grade. And the parent emailing had concerns of perhaps the mixed messages that might be coming by the district inadvertently endorsing a brand like Procter & Gamble for growth and development of our students. So that particular concern will be moved over to alternative and supplemental health curriculum so we can look at other alternatives. I did email the parent back as well as Dr. Upshaw and invited further communication. At this point, there wasn't a supplemental video that the parent was recommending. It was just concern about the video that we were currently using. But we are always happy to expand and look at other options that may be a better fit if that's determined to be the case. And then the other email was parents inquiring about athletic versus club sports for on-campus versus off-campus PE. And so this is definitely a more lengthy conversation, but there's there's concern with parents whose children play competitive leagues outside of school and having access and time to train. I spoke with Mr. Haymark about it, so we are just kind of scratching the surface and revisiting this policy that's happened that's been around in the district for quite a while, and just making sure that we take a fresh look to figure out if there's a way we can bridge some of these community concerns to help improve the overall fitness with our students. A couple of hiccups that have come up with the email that we are still working through that I think as a SHAC we need to be aware of. When a parent submits an email to the SHAC, as a SHAC chair, my assumption is that parent wants to be identified so that they can work with the SHAC in regards to their name and their email. So we perhaps need to add an attestation so the district doesn't have liability in distributing the name and the email of the person. So when the person submits the email, box pops up and says, I understand this will be, given to a non-district employee, the SHAC chair, whoever we decide on the SHAC is going to get these emails. Currently it's me. And then some pop-up education prior to the author hitting send, because a couple of the emails that came to us were HR related matters, so maybe just some brief education before the author sends the email to understand what the SHAC is about, and their HR request should probably go to HR. So to offload the district people who are reading and having to sort through which goes to me, which goes to them. I test drove the email process, and I think we need to add an auto reply, and then just clarification of who's responding to the SHAC email. I think there was some confusion on that out of the gate. But I appreciate all of your time tonight, and I am not intentionally rushing this to not have discussion. If someone would like to talk about it, I'm happy to listen, or we can talk about it at the next meeting, but I don't want to be disrespectful of your time either. So.
Are you saying that we're going over the off-campus curriculum?
I'm saying that we are going to look as a SHAC, given our responsibility for physical education. So TEC asked the SHAC to evaluate the number of minutes of education from K through 8. The specific concern at hand was junior high off-campus PE. So that very much falls in the purview of the SHAC. But this is something that falls also very much into the district. And so helping us liaise community concerns and values with the district policy, and we may be able to improve it, we may be able to bring new concerns to the table, but having an open dialogue so that we can make sure that all of our student athletes are respected in their prospective sports, that our main goal is to improve health and fitness, and that every parent, when they bring forth a concern, is heard, and we give a very solid, reliable response that we have seriously, taken seriously what they brought forth and seek for any mediation.
So are we looking more in off-campus curriculum? And my kids played off-campus. Are we looking more in depth of it in the next meeting?
Well, currently I'm working with Mr. Haymark, and we had just a very preliminary conversation just discussing this email, and so there'll be more discussions about that, and we can bring it back to the next SHAC meeting, and if there's more email correspondence, we can call a special meeting. Some of these lengthier topics I think are really well suited for special meetings, so that people who have interest in them, we can have all these deep discussions. And then the unique perspectives I think really need to be heard and sometimes don't get heard at the big formal meetings. So at this point, this is the early conversation, and I feel like we're working pretty well to make sure that all the concerns are heard. So, okay.
I do want to echo, I could have written both those emails. I haven't read those emails, but I can echo each one of those comments. I know a lot of parents that could.
Yes.
I don't know that they know about the SHAC email or anything, and if we need like a political critical mass, just let people know about it.
Yeah, well, and as we streamline communication, with the requirement for the SHAC meetings to be posted in all the administrative offices of all the campuses, we've kicked around the idea, and I say we, Dr. Upshaw, Mr. Haymark, Ms. Kersey, just trying to figure out how do we get the information out that the SHAC is here, so we really can have a representative pulse as to the sentiment of the community. But to your point, Mr. Davidson, having some sort of QR code that takes people to our website, the district website, so they can see what we're about. Here's the email, here's the concern, because I agree, I think that the sentiment on those two emails represents more than just one parent. I think it's a large number of parents that are kind of navigating through. So we have a lot of work on our hands, but I'm confident we'll get through it, and I think that we're really headed in an amazing direction. So, all right. Any new business? Hearing none, next. All right, so closing remarks, thank you. A million times over, thank you. I just am really proud of this group and how everybody's working really hard to do good work. So, and on that, Mr. Haymark? Okay, on that note, I motion for the meeting to adjourn. Yes, all in favor. So we are adjourned 6:12.